All right. We are we're in the hood. We're in the hood today. We're quite in the hood. All good in the hood. Yes. Welcome to the show. It is time. We are starting the next segment in Karl Marx. Howard. Let's see here. Just ready to rock and roll and get on with the show. You know, I have talked enough. Now it is time for me to read for you. So as I've gone through and discussed since the last segment and during the last segment with my reactions, it's wild listening to the bourgeois like characterization, right? You know, because he's definitely, he's definitely talking about the burgers, and the bourgeois is basically, the burgers are like still there, but like the burgers are like the old money, and then the bourgeoisie are like the people swimming in the economy of the burgers, right? Now, looking over the whole Portuguese situation of where these burgers came from. The Portuguese and Sri Lankan. I think we, who talks about communism and then thinks about Sri Lanka? I mean, you have to actually care about the history of the alleged bourgeoisie. Do communists talk about Sri Lanka in ways that they don't tell us about? I just find it odd. I mean, I certainly don't hear them talking about the Portuguese. I made my statements of where this can intersect with anti-Semitism. All right. So, hold on. Let me just put the chat into view. Proletarians and communists. In what relation do the communists stand to proletarians as a whole? The communists do not form a separate party opposed to other working class parties. They have no interests separate and apart from those of the proletariat as a whole. They do not set up any sectarian principles of their own by which to shape and mold the proletarian movement. Communists are distinguished from the other working class parties by this only. In the national struggle of the proletarians of the different countries, they point out and bring to the front the common interests of the entire proletariat, independently of all nationality. In the various stages of development which the struggle of the working class against the bourgeoisie has to pass through, they always and everywhere represent the interests of the movement as a whole. Communists, therefore, are on the one hand practically the most advanced and resolute section of the working class parties of every country, that section which pushes forward all others. On the other hand, theoretically, they have over the great mass of the proletariat the advantage of clearly understanding the line of march, the conditions and ultimate general results of the proletarian movement. Right, okay, so this is a sales pitch for the Communist Party, right? Now, this only exists because somebody had to condition the answer to a problem, right? And what was the problem for the proletariat that wasn't interested in communism? What is the problem you give them to make them interested in communism, considering the results of communism? Right? One thing that we can kind of see played out in a manner of speaking is technology-wise, right? One could possibly argue that Soviet technology never would have entered the world with the way they did everything, especially the postmodern brutalism, right? Because they wanted to have an industrial society. I think the truth of the matter is that we have done so wrong in a developmental process of making the workplace an enjoyable place for people to kind of do the job being themselves, per se, right? For a long time, because of just, the manner in which many bosses are conditioned to make of expectations of certain things. And it took a while for the world to change and to realize that the social order of things isn't going to fall apart because guy with long hair is on the job site. Right? No. It's like, look at him kicking ass and he enjoys his life. Good for him. Right? Nobody's trying to make me stop enjoying my life. Banging on glass over here. Anyway. Right? Because otherwise, this would be kind of self-evident, one would think, by the merit of just thinking in terms of community and community working together. On a basic level, right? Because I'm sure they would make arguments the way we hear arguments today, like, hey, see this thing that you have right now in the world? That is something you get in communism. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so, in which case, why are we changing much if we already have it? Anyway, the communists, therefore, are, on the one hand, practically the most advanced and resolute section of the working class parties of every country, that section which pushes forward all others. On the other hand, theoretically, they have over the great mass of the proletariat the advantage of clearly understanding the line of march, the conditions, and the ultimate general results of the proletarian movement. The immediate aim of the communists is the same as that of all the other proletarian parties. Right, so he's assuming a proletarian movement, right? He may be assuming this proletarian movement because did these people he is calling proletarian initially consider themselves proletarians? Why weren't they just simply considered the working class outright? Why is proletarian a word that? Why is proletarian a dirty communist word, right? Does proletariat have to equal anti-capitalist, for instance, and anti-nationalist, for instance? Does it have to equate that? Or does it simply have to equate that because I am a proletariat, I am a fool and perhaps a monster for backing the capitalist. Does it have to mean that? You see? We have to understand, like, we have to fully comprehend that either has to be addressed in this book, or it, like everything else we've been reading so far, forces you to go read a bunch of history, because it all sounds awful on paper. The immediate aim of the communists is the same of that of all the other proletarian parties. Formation of the proletariat into a class, overthrow of the bourgeoisie supremacy, conquest of political power by the proletariat, right? So this is probably the kind of stuff that came up. Probably the czars, because I believe the czars really fucking liked America. And so, yeah, so they let in these, quote, bourgeoisie, because the czar was, there's a side of the czar that one could say, like, he decided to do the right thing and change the way that his empire works and his kingdom works with the turning tide. And, we don't have serfs anymore. Now we have this working class sort. This is keeping us globally competitive, as they say, right? But that's a global competition which you get to experience the benefits and in a beneficial way, right? It's just like if there's an industrial thing out there, you can make all sorts of choices to live within or without that industrial thing in your direct life. You can be supportive of the industrial thing, but perhaps you work on the more agrarian side where there's still industry because you've modernized your agriculture with machines and such, but you're out there in the field instead of the factory, right? Everybody's got a certain degree of choice, right? And in a benevolent communist society, it's like Star Trek, right? Where everybody is not, you're not given you're not given an education like Che Guevara says, right? Like, you're fully fucking cultured in Star Trek, even though it's basically a workplace and it's a fucking eyesore of a workplace where, like, the inside of the Enterprise is like an executive office suite. So, it feels like you're a fucking, intergalactic skyscraper for your corporation. The Enterprise, get it? Right? And so that's also the joke, right? Because that was the globalist communist plot, right? The Cubans are not liked because of their originalist values. And that meant, like, the purity of the revolution. So the dark and tough situation that Cuba finds itself in, perhaps it's South Korea also, is that they're in the failed model, right? They're in the failed model. They're not terrible people at all, but this is it. This is their cognitive limit. This is their level of whatever, and they've become far too alienated with the world, right? Because that's all that they did was say, I want to be alienated from the world. It's just like, most people agree they do not want the human condition to be that way. So we have to deal with that morally and ethically gray area of contract relationship between highly capable industries and the destiny of nations. That's life. That's life in the human race. You participating or fucking not, motherfucker. I'm sorry there's a lot of bloodshed and rape involved. I don't know what to fucking do about that. But that's why we keep war on the table, and that is why I am Aries. The theoretical conclusions of the communists are in no way based on ideas of principles that have been invented or discovered by this or that would-be universal reformer. They merely express, in general terms, actual relations springing from an existing class struggle, from a historical movement going on under our very eyes. The abolition of existing property relations is not at all a distinctive feature of communism. All property relations in the past have continually been subject to historical change consequent upon the change in historical conditions. The French Revolution, for example, abolished feudal property in favor of bourgeois property. The distinguished feature of communism is not the abolition of property generally, but the abolition of bourgeois property. Right? But modern bourgeois private property is the final and most complete expression of the system of producing and appropriating products that is based on the class antagonism, on the exploitation of the many by the few. Okay. Let's talk about that, because I heard a little bit of things that I like to hear from the altruism of the communists. Right, at least in their fucking sales pitch. I'm just talking about their sales pitch. They failed miserably. The Soviet Union fell for a reason, because they kind of, like, one of the things they tell you is they kind of betrayed this. This is why I'm reading the Communist Manifesto, right? You know, because these are psychological fallacies that had to be broken on certain minds. Okay? So let's read this passage one more time. The distinguished feature of communism is not the abolition of property generally, right? But the abolition of the bourgeois property. So what he's saying, so like, if he's trying to say that corporations shouldn't have property rights the way a living man does, then I agree, because the liability then falls on the living man who is in possession of that property, right? And, you know, by extension, the liability for any personnel doing as instructed on that property, which is why you can't break the law. But if the bourgeois is getting special treatment by the Tsar, and you cease to believe that your institutions can protect you from this, then the only thing the institution can do is become an institution that destroys it as the only means of protecting you from it. And the question is, was this grievance so terrible that you actually had to destroy the property itself? Because it was going to be so bad within the next moments of your existence, just because you didn't understand what the Tsar was perhaps doing with the money. Okay, the modern bourgeois private property is the final and most complete expression of the system of producing and appropriating products that is based on class antagonism and the exploitation of the many by the few. So there's things within this industry that are made that also, he's saying that these things are driving certain wedges, right? So I think it's, so you're getting the problem of the ownership of the product of itself is also an advertising drawing leverage of power by economic interest to the bourgeois who produced the thing that you're owning, right? And so he's looking at this growth of that power structure, right? And then we've seen this in a lot of great revolutionary allegory stories about the little industry that turns into a monster. One of the best ones is the Lorax. The CGI version is just fucking cool. The one they did in the 2000s. That I want to watch that one again. But anyway, yeah, and so yeah, so all the special privileges there, right? It pisses everyone off, but yeah, but ultimately, a lot of these bourgeois were serving the strength of the empire, and it's a question of where was life going for a tremendous amount of Russian people in that empire, right? Remember, these are the same. This is all happening around the same time. Yeah, this is all. We're talking about the lead up to World War I. Is being seeded now, right? Consequences of World War I. And there's a lot to say about the last Tsar of Russia. In this sense, the theory of the communists may be summed up in the single sentence, abolition of private property. By the way, it can be very possible, because of the amount of Kiev Russian descended bloodlines that may still be lingering in the Kiev Rus, that perhaps Vladimir Putin is a special agent for a bloodline of Tsar that cannot be reinstituted until Kiev is reclaimed. I have nothing to back that up, but that would make an awesome story. But anyway, in this sense, the theory of the communists may be summed up in the single sentence, abolition of private property. We communists have been reproached with the desire of abolishing the right of personally acquiring property as the fruit of a man's own labor, which property is alleged to be the groundwork of all personal freedom, activity, and independence. Right, Putin was KGB, but considering how far Russia has gone as under this version of itself, right? I don't know if I don't have any hardcore true problems with him. And I think that at the end of the day, Russia's on the Permanent Security Council, just like it was in the age of Stalin. So, I mean, everybody's talking. I don't know what to tell people. It's just like every time something happens, it's like America broke the law and how it attacked. Did it? Or did everybody clear everything with all of the global peoples? Because our war declarations were not based on our treaties with a global social discourse entity such as the United Nations, where we keep these things sorted out, which also tells the world that when we strike somebody is because we're upholding this and that. Right? And then people have to bring up their claim about it. I've mentioned that many times. All right. Okay. In this sense, the theory of the communist may be summed up in the single sentence of abolition of private property. Okay, so hold on a second. So the distinguishing feature of communism is not the abolition of property generally. It is, but in this sense, the theory of the communist may be summed up in the single sentence, abolition of private property. Now, you see, there you go, right? Now you have the fuller understanding of it, right? The Communist Rent-a-World, Klaus Schwab, World Economic Forum. We communists have been reproached with the desire of abolishing the right of personally acquiring property as the fruit of a man's own labor, which property is alleged to be the groundwork of all personal freedom, activity, and independence. Right fucking there. Right fucking there. Like, seriously. Like, why would the proletariat be down with that? Right? Why would the proletariat be down with that? Like, why in that rhetoric? What was the context happening in Russia with the so-called proletariat? Did they have to... Did they change the definition of proletariat? Or is this the terms by which they accepted the definition of proletariat? Hard-won, self-acquired, self-earned property. Do you mean the property of the petty artisan and of the small peasant, a form of property that preceded the bourgeois form? There is no need to abolish that. The development of industry has, to a great extent, already destroyed it and is still destroying it. You see? It's literally just turning you back. It's trying to say, yeah, it is. This is you own nothing and like it. Just like that. The vicious level of minds that have to fucking organize everybody to make the rest of everybody, as they somehow power play parse it, to go along with doing it that way. Right? It's just like, who did this fly with? How did they get so many people in such a narrow, bigoted mind to be like, you know, to straight up be, fuck yeah, no personal freedom, activity, and independence? What? For what purpose do you get excited about that, right? These are the people that are like addicted to war, is ultimately what it is, because that's fascism. That's fascism. Communism is also fascism, because you have to groom somebody to this. All right, I've been at it actually for 45 minutes without a break. This, I think, is a great place to break. All right, where are we at here? I want Let's see. No, that's too long. All this stuff's gonna lay long, isn't it? Of course it is. Why would I go to a fucking easy fucking playlist? I can't even believe the one song I picked was a decent length. All right, so like I went to a green metal playlist, which is basically black metal for pagans, and everything on here is like of epic length. So I need to change it up. I need to change it up to something. You know what? I don't think I've heard it yet. So let's see. No. I'm assuming he's on here. Don't make me go to YouTube to play it. Wait, is that the new song? No. This is the new coming album. Isn't one song out? I thought there was one song out already. All right, I'm pre-saving. Okay, January. No, tipping point. Yeah. I thought that's what I saw. Right? Yes. Okay, tipping point. I want to play the new Megadeth. I can't even remember if I've listened to it once. I would say, yeah. Alluvietti's folk metal, which the green metal is, like I said, it's just black metal that's thematically pagan instead of death cult. Yes, new Megadeth. This is Tipping Point. Off of the new album coming out in January. What the hell's the name of it? One sec. What's the name of the new album? Is it self-titled? Might be self-titled. Anyway, this is Tipping Point. Oh, I did hear this. Now you get to also. All right, you heard that on the double back because I had my mic on for that last blast at the end, but woo, yeah, man, dude, I'm pretty excited. Like, I like that song, dude, I love these titles. Like, I don't care. That's Tipping Point, right? I don't care. Hey God, let there be shred. I wonder if that's an instrumental. Puppet Parade. I wonder if he's rearranging Master of Puppets. If that's a rearrange of Master of Puppets, I'm gonna flip my shit, and it better be sick. Honestly, I love let Megadeth troll like Trump till the end or something, right? Another bad day. Made to kill. Obey the call. I am war. The last note. And then Ride the Lightning bonus track. I mean, he's gonna do Ride the Lightning. Well, holy shit balls. Okay. Let's get back to the imagined struggles against the bourgeoisie. Or do you mean modern bourgeois private property? But does not wage labor create any property for the laborer? Not a bit. It creates capital, i.e. that kind of property which exploits wage labor. Yeah, if he's building something for the state, communism kept a state. They had a big state. You weren't allowed to not be a part of the state. In both parties, under royalty and under party rule. Right? In the Ayatollah's Iran, as a captor of the Persian people, you're not allowed to run in a party that doesn't serve the Ayatollah. And so, just like everyone else, you just live with this fucking love-hate relationship of this guy that doesn't reflect the values of your soul. Just like America does with every poor electoral choice it makes. But, yeah, they get capital, you get currency, and you get to go take care of things with your currency. So, anyways, let's continue to listen to this dribble. Not a bit. It creates capital, i.e. that kind of property which exploits wage labor, and which cannot increase except upon condition of begetting a new supply of wage labor for fresh exploitation. Right, this gets into the issue of hating a world where anybody gets any further with themselves. Because, you know, you have to not be able to truly believe in a world of love to be capable in order to be like that, right? You've got to suffocate everybody because you're suffocating, right? And it's just like the arguments get very, very repetitive. You know, they're reductionist arguments. They care not. They care not to back themselves up. These things would fall apart to scrutiny in the reality of their day. I guarantee you. We do a very good job erasing history in a way of per se. What if it was the communist revolution that destroyed the so-called Tartarian world? I think that the American Civil War was a hostile takeover by old money, which had gotten a foothold in through not so much the war debt, because you could pay that off and then be done with it. Why stick around after the war debt is paid, right? But by financing the corruption during the Reconstruction period, created astronomical costs for repairs that kept it going long enough to, yes, rebuild the country, but by that point, we had lost the plot on what these early industrialists that built the 19th century were up to, right? Everything hinges on the 1600s, which is roughly the time that the Roman Empire actually fell. And we are still some 2,000 years of history since the classical period time that we know of in the Bible. They didn't just add 1,000 years and call it dark. But they did darken 1,000 years. Right? It's a period of time where social decline, we plummeted in literacy, and we're, if we're lucky, the future of whoever fucking picks themselves up, maybe the Chinese, turn out to be super fucking cool, and we had nothing to be afraid of. But I hate that you are forcing me to hinge my future on that gamble. And that's why I speak out about these things. That's why I'm reading this book. Not to promote it. Anyway. To be a capitalist is to have not only a purely, personal, but a social status in production. Capital is a collective product, and only by the united action of many members may, in the last resort, only by the united action of all members of society can it be set in motion. Capital is therefore not a personal, it is a social power. Yeah. So when therefore capital is converted into a common property, into the property of all members of society, personal property is not thereby transformed into social property. It is only the social property of the property that is changed. It loses its class character. Let us now take weight. The fuck does that mean, dude? What the fuck is that jargon? That sounds like juggling. It literally just sounds like you just juggled the words around. It follows no fucking logic. It's circular as fuck. It's low-class navel-gazing, right? I'd imagine this is a poorly educated public being duped in by this shit. The average price of wage labor is the minimum wage, i.e. the quantum of the means of substance, which is absolutely requisite to keep the laborer in bare existence as a laborer. Right. So, yeah, and it's a sucky situation. It's a sucky situation. Guess what? We saw how that turned out in communism. You definitely had... Communism basically created a semi-middle class to create a certain kind of illusion. Right? Because you didn't have people doing important stuff for the government living right next door to somebody, to anybody, right? You had to deal with secret police kind of things. Because at the end of the day, they know they didn't really get a consensus. They just convinced the killers. All they did was convince the killers and cooperate with the people that demoralized the defenses. And that's what's happening now. And you're going to have some transcendent wisdom, because it's foolish to destroy yourself just because you're being forced into interacting with a different world. You're not in that world, right? Like there's a fucking world where people are playing with fucking VRs and shit right now and destroying themselves with some really bad fucking junk food, and you know they're living in hell. Right? You're not going to be forced to do any of that. They're going to try and tunnel you, and you're going to force yourself because you can't stop, slow down, look around, realize, oh, you're running through a hallway so fast you don't see the doors on either side of you. So you don't stop for fucking 5 seconds to read the signs on the doors, peer through any potential windows, maybe take a second and listen and see, and see if there's anything else that's better than just running down this hallway until you die. Or they catch you. Or whatever. Okay. Where was I? Subsistence, stage labor. What therefore the wage laborer appropriates by means of his labor merely suffices to prolong and reproduce a bare existence. Or, if you work hard, you will have a bare existence. And you flip the E and the R. See what they did there? That's called spellcraft. He just said a Russian person, because he's talking to Russians. That's where this is landing, right? Like, well, hold on. I don't know if that translates. No, it should translate primordially to something that's going to sound like that, because the implication of being bare as in naked and being bare like that of a bear, like a berserker and such, are actually coming from equivalent roots. So that's a gamble. But here, for how it lands on our ears, I have to fucking play at that. Because that's significant, especially because odds are your fellow commie didn't read it in Russian anyway. We by no means intend to abolish this personal appropriation of the products of labor, an appropriation that is made for the maintenance and reproduction of human life. And that leaves no... The fact that you have to even fucking say that. Oh, look, we're not so crazy that you won't be able to have fucking families. I mean, don't worry. You're going to make babies for us. That'll be just fine. Thank you. We'd like more of your babies. More proletarians, please. That's the other difference. It's very Chad West in that sense, right? It's very Trump administration fertility policies. Listen, now that I understand the Bach saga, right? The swastika is rolling clockwise, right? We are being commanded to make more life, make less stuff. Okay? We had small families because they wanted us focused on stuff. So have 2 kids because that's manageable, and you can retire at a reasonable time. It was all to balance selfishness and putting, and putting life and love and light and happiness and creativity and value into the world, right? The incredible experience of family, the magic that the child brings when it shows you its little gifts, its inner cleverness, and so on and so forth. All right, because I kind of pushed the last break late, I don't want to condense everything too much, so this is a good point to hit the next break, and then we'll be a little bit more in alignment. So let me go back over to the playlist. That song was the only new Megadeth song available, and I'm in the mood to jump around right now, so I have no idea what I feel like playing you. Let's go with... All right. We're gonna do. I'm gonna pull. I'm doing some Mastodon. We're doing Mastodon. We're doing Crack the Sky because Crack the Sky, is directly related. to the story. So, yeah. Oh, the last Baron is 13 fucking minutes. I can't go with that. And the Czar, Usurper, Escape, Martyr, Spiral, that's 11 minutes. Oh, you guys are killing me. All right. All right, we're going to do Quintessence. Fuck it. All right, there we go. Good stuff. Woo, man. I saw them play Crack the Sky live. The whole album when they co-headlined with Death fucking Clock. It was a fucking awesome seeing Brandon Small on stage. Holy shit. Anyway, so let's get back to it. For the last break, I'm gonna drop some Aluvete for Howard. And I don't remember if I'm pronouncing that one correctly because I don't hear it often enough. All right. Yeah, big key to pronunciation is familiarity with the texture of the language. That's the best way I can describe it, right? It's just like you throw like phonetically correct stuff on paper. If I've heard enough Arabic, I can see a word in Arabic and I can kind of get it right contextually. I can kind of put it together, right? It's why I'm enjoying Dune so much, right? Same thing with like Japanese. It's the funny it's that funny thing, right? It's just like are you good enough at language to be like, oh, he's speaking Asian, right? Or are you good enough to be like, oh, it was Cantonese, or like it was South Central Japan, right? Like you get like real in nitty gritty. Like how many people listen to Americans and they'd be like, oh, it's a Boston accent, right? And they're not used to listening to more other kinds of American accents. All right, so in bourgeois society, living labor is but a means to increase accumulated labor. In communist society, accumulated labor is but a means to widen, to enrich, to promote the existence of the laborer, which it didn't do. In bourgeois society, therefore, the past dominates the present. In communist society, the present dominates the past. In bourgeois society, capital is independent and has individuality, while the living person is dependent and has no individuality. What? Okay, all right. If their society was doing this weird thing where, like, it's like an early version of corporations are people, then I get it. Then I get it. Because, fuck that noise, right? And then the communists, so the bastards set up the plot, right? Somebody whispers in the czar's ear and says, do the policy this way. And he's like, okay. Right? And, maybe that was fucking Rasputin, collaborating with whoever. And so they go that way, and it creates an engine of envy, an engine of resent, just like the way our system had been set up running up to 2016. You see what they did there? So then you play off of that corruption on purpose. It's Slugworth, man. It's all fucking Slugworth. You took the bait. That is the lesson, at least in the movie, the original Gene Wilder-based Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Right? It's the goddamn, you either knew who fucking Slugworth was. I mean, no, it didn't matter who Slugworth was. You either were morally an ethically sound person or not. Or at least you decided that you would have nothing by which to betray trust because of how everything hinges on that everlasting gobstopper. Right? Communism is the everlasting gobstopper, which is just the serpent's temptation of man as an agent of the Lord. Right? You want to get off that train? Get off that train like me. Transcend it. And fucking enjoy your fucking self. And whatever fuckover was happening to the people that they went with this, I'm sorry for you, man. I am. But, consciousness gets hijacked all the time, unfortunately. This is a very fucking hard game. But the further you get ahead of it, and you do it with the right amount of courage, strength, integrity, heart, clarity and command of mind, and on point with making it clear who you really are. Right? And part of that is every time you expand, you have to stop and be a person of conversation. Meaning that every time you step up, if you can elevate the conversation, right? Why was the Oval Office meeting of Trump and Mamdani staged the way that it was? Why was it staged that way? They felt like it was appropriate to propose a new political contention script. They want to try something more civil, a more civil terms of disagreement. Isn't that refreshing, though? Regardless of all the corruption we could be talking about, let's pretend that the one bit of the propaganda that doesn't matter is how guilty all these people are of things. And we're just here solving the problems that we have amongst us. Just the private, independent persons operating amongst our nations. It's quite an ontological conundrum. So I just don't like it. It's beyond me that you have a population. It seems like whatever their lives were in the feudal period, something dramatically in. It's why it's so interesting. I think that you're probably talking about people that have lived in those lands and like villages and stuff like that. with the whole family system aspect of it, with nobilities and those people having all the direct power over government, thus, your guards and patrols, military, navy, so on and so forth. Your various territorial specialists, the guys that are great in the north versus your guys that are great as scientists, so on and so forth. And so this industrial period comes along, and we have to change the way that we work. We have to increase a population so that way we have far more population than we need in the fields making food. Then that population becomes our new working population, right? So, I think all of that is fine. I think that it's okay to be somewhat in lockstep with things as long as, like I said, like we're talking about the swastika and the box saga, right? If you're clockwise, you're making life. If you're counterclockwise, you're producing technology. Well, we just need to be a little bit more even keel about that. What we're doing is that we're spinning the chakras in different directions without people's witting understanding of why. It's not just a fucking vote flip. It's a polarity flip in the spin of a chakra, which is saying, are you spinning towards life or are you spinning towards production? Right? Or because of the, it's a, with the technology thing, right? And you don't want to be counterclockwise for too long. You destroy yourselves. And we've been in such a strife for this technocratic bureaucracy that we gave ourselves no natural and even-keeled leeway into a polarity shift for the necessity of flipping the script for the continuity of our existence. And there are a lot of people that just sound like asshole eugenicists about it. And it's not supposed to be something so malignant. It's not supposed to be it's not supposed to be some horrible death wheel where now we start the abortion train. Everybody gets an abortion and a phone. Right? This is the Obama administration. You get an abortion, you get a cell phone. You get a welfare check, don't worry about your fucking job. Let's get you out of prison, sir. And let's just, let's say fuck it on rehabilitation. But let's pretend like we rehabilitated them because obviously, right? I mean, you were lying about him in the first place, and a lot of it was him being angry because, he's a victim of racism. And that was our existence under the Obama administration. And it took a while for it to hit a critical mass. And somebody got ahead of the game. And, hey, listen, when you can't trust any politician, but when the political sphere starts running with your message, you just make sure that you're talking about your message and not talking about the politician who is parroting it and taking a shit all over its context, right? It's your responsibility to uphold the integrity of the meaning of what you say. And then by doing so, eventually, it'll be under, like people will get that figured out. It's, you have to go through a lot though. It's tough. It's a challenge. The world needs its shamans, it needs its wizards and such. It needs its powerful wordsmiths, because we arise and, we speak for the unspoken injustices. This is trying to bring about the understanding of the deeper issue. But by just exploiting how shallow the Communist Manifesto has been thus far. Not wholly shallow, it's just that it sits there and the ends that it's looking for, they sound abysmal on paper. I mean, I can't fathom how they fucking came to that conclusion back then, right? So the mind of the feudal Slav must have been a very different entity, right? And I think that, being, the harsh steppe area, the whole Eastern Bloc area, the whole 9 yards, it looks like a pretty rough place, and you need to fight for all that precious fertile soil, and Ukraine's got some of the best, like this gets into the Khrushchev's mistake like territory, right? Dude, there's so much, like somebody who's really well versed in the history of what was going on, combined with like looking at how the wave of the successing of Communist Manifesto sales pitch worked. I mean, it's quite something, where all these people came from, right? And it was really a shadow bourgeoisie, a hostile takeover, because, it was the foreign support for the Communist Party that gave it an economic engine in the Tsar's kingdom. It was something that was getting through. Do people want to say, how many people would be conspiracy theorists and say that was an inside job and that the Tsar faked his death? That there's more theories that Hitler faked his death than the Tsar did. It seems to be a pretty open and shut case. You're going to have to find a different Slavic royal bloodline. Like I said, my bloodline theory. Good, it's 4:35. Let's take the last break. I promised for Howard that I would grab an Olivetti. Let me see. I want to take a good look at this. I'm asking myself, you know what? I don't want to overthink it. We're going to go with the prodigal ones. 3 minutes, 44 seconds. Short side this time. Oh, there we go. That's better. Excellent. So, The Prodigal Ones by Olivetti. That one went hard. That one went real hard. Okie doke. And we're back in, and I didn't hear anything from Howard. I played a Olivetti for him. You can't be like, awesome. Come on, man. You got to participate in the chat for me here, buddy. I'm a very lonely podcaster. Look at me subsisting. But by the way, oh man, I almost forgot. In fact, let me double check because I don't want to prematurely assume that I haven't lost it. Wait a minute. Man, I don't want to lie to you. Oh, good. I'm in the 700 club, motherfuckers. I'm at 702 subs. I've got 702 subscribers. Thank you, new guys. I literally got there like just the other night. I made a post on Facebook and I linked to the Substance panel. And I said, I am one sub from the 700 club. And within 5 minutes, I refreshed my YouTube and I was at 700 fucking subs. Like, oh my God, one guy did it. Wow. And so then I left a comment under that and I said, thank you. So, guys, thank you so much. I'm glad you're not pulling out on me. I'm assuming that all of you are living, breathing human beings that are keeping tabs on your account, and you're not just going to disappear because you're a bots or abandoned. Unless, of course, you passed away, my condolences, and, you know, that might be a reason why you lose a sub. It's not always because someone's throttling you. There are real-life human beings doing things all the time, like canceling accounts because maybe they're worried about, you know, the CIA, right? So they want to restart their digital identity. I restarted my digital identity. I had a completely different page way back in the day. I've gone through several. One of them is still kind of out there, but until I figure out how to gain access to it, I don't want to even fucking talk about it because it's my cringiest time when I was starting in 2012, and it's fine. I'll share it. I'm just not going to do it now, but I'm not that interested. But it is what it is. Anyway, it's just that I don't want to drive traffic to it and then I have no ability to fucking throttle comments and shit, right? And then the worst is, what if somebody fucking hacks that shit? And then, like, acts like that's the original, because look, there's the 2012 stuff. That freaks me out, right? So I'm just on the record saying that that's a possibility, because I lost the password to that site before they switched everything over to algorithmic services. So they don't have an actual record. Or they don't have an actual, like, function in... I haven't done it in a long time. Maybe they fixed that, but at the time, I couldn't think of it. It doesn't matter. You don't care about that. We're here to destroy communism. Anyway... It means wish to enrich and promote the existence of the laborer. Just yeah, the laborer, right? It's all in economic terms, right? And it's laborer. Does that include the scientist? Does that include the guy in the office? Right? Does it imply that everybody that's making this happen that is not a laborer That, because there has to be a not laborer in order to be one who doesn't, for whom this doesn't apply to, because you're the manager of. All of this requires management to organize. You make a management system. That's your bureaucracy. That is part of fascism. It's what existed in Nazi Germany, all the socialist countries, all the communist countries, and as well as this country, unfortunately. But its existence here doesn't stick the same way. There's something about America that's like that, where certain things don't stick. But what terrifies me is, do we make the same mistake our ancestors, not our ancestors did, but the previous refugees of Turtle Island. America is kind of like the world's refugee center. And I don't mean that because of American foreign policy. I mean, that's literally the history of America. Everybody knows that people that the Eskimos were the tail end of a huge migration out of North Asia. That's probably because, I don't know, the Ice Age. This is all Bach Saga. This is the Ragnarok, man. It makes so much fucking sense. It hurts my fucking feelings. You had to go south in some way, shape, or form. You knew that it wouldn't be a great idea for everybody to go south in the same direction. There's an abundance all over the earth. We'll get back together someday when the ice subsides, right? And we weren't supposed to fight each other, but we became very different people during the period of the first Ragnarok. And there's a lot of details underneath all of that you have to study history to pull it all together, right? When you know the details that correspond. But of course, it all hinges on Lemminkainen Temple and who's ever in charge of that aspect of Finland and its responsibility to the world has not ordained it yet. And I certainly hope that perhaps someone emerges that may be a long-lost, proper descendant of Bach. But that's far-fetched. He seemed to be quite the unicorn. But we will see. We'll see. Odin Ma is still supreme. Let's see. And the abolition of this state of things is called by the bourgeois abolition of individuality and freedom. And rightly so. The abolition of the bourgeois individuality, bourgeois independence, bourgeois freedom is undoubtedly aimed at. Right, well, yes, that comes, so that's what they believe it takes to end the bourgeoisie, right? So here you see where they are most interested in the social fracture. Come break down the social fracture that has established the culture for the bourgeoisie. By freedom is meant under the present bourgeois conditions of production, free trade, free selling, and buying. But if selling and buying disappears, free selling and buying disappears also. this talk about free selling and buying and all the other brave words. Brave words? What the fuck does he mean by that? Of our bourgeois about freedom in general have a meaning, if any, only in contrast with restricted selling and buying, with the fettered traders of the Middle Ages, but have no meaning when opposed to the communistic abolition of buying and selling, of the bourgeois' conditions of production, and of the bourgeois itself. Right. This is like, if somebody is worm-tonguing in the bourgeois to fuck these people over in some way, shape, or form, right? So these are people of poor character. And if the Tsar is going to ignore this, he's set up his own destruction, right? But the emperor had plans in the world. He needs to expand the empire for stuff. And he's hinging on the expansion of the empire to deliver things to the empire that will raise the quality of life for the serfs in such a way to keep the system going great. That's what you do under the most benevolent of conditions in this situation. But that's not what he did. Instead, he let Rasputin turn him mad with strange, dark, occultist mysticism. One of Franklin Delano Roosevelt's vice presidents, who almost became president. You should look up the 1944 Democratic National Convention and look up how they handled the ticket for the vice president, because they downplay the politics of how many. We've never seen such a thing before. How many fucking how many presidents go through how many VPs, right? Let's see. But dude, like, the brave, anyway, in general have a meaning. Restricted ages. So anyway, you are horrified at our intending to do away with private property. But in your existing society, private property is already done away with for 9/10 of the population. Its existence for the few is solely due to its non-existence in the hands of those 9/10. You reproach us, therefore, with intending to do away with a form of property, the necessary condition for whose existence is the non-existence of any property for the immense majority of society. In one word, you reproach us with intending to do away with your property. Precisely so, that is just what we intend. Right. You can't have your house with your swimming pool because, if you couldn't make that with your own community and for your own community, then you can't have it. Now, applying that on a global level is horrifying. And you can see why you now have an issue when you talk about why border is important. And then you can rationalize communism easily, but not appreciate the consequences of communism, which will not help because you'll feel good for 5 seconds because of the justice of eliminating an evil in a system that had been corrupted and thus confused as evil and destroyed, to be replaced with another hierarchical structure as per where consciousness wants to be. All this, and it's horrifying to think about when you fail a test of shadow work. And it's upsetting to see it happen, right? I don't know if we've dodged a bullet on a national scale, but at least I dodged a needle. In one word, you reproach us with intending to do away with your property. Precisely so. That is just what we intend. From the moment when labor can no longer be converted into capital, money, or rent, into a social power capable of being monopolized, i.e., from the moment when individual property can no longer be transformed into bourgeois property, into capital, from that moment, you say, individuality vanishes. So, like, you see, if this aligns with Che Guevara's thinking about no art, for instance, right? Like, think about this horrible society where you're groomed into one kind of a thing. You're a laborer and you must wear only the uniform. Period. Because it's the company uniform. You're wearing the company's underwear. We own your balls. This is the shit. Fuck these people, man. Do you understand? Fuck these people. I mean, I can't believe that this was a public... I cannot believe. Like, what... How did we get here? How did this become something how did this become the sales pitch? It's crazy to think about. What's the book I have to read about the age that Karl Marx was growing up in? Like, you know, take me fucking 50 years back or something and give me a fucking Russian book to read. Because where the fuck is all this coming from? What propaganda is going this evil? You must therefore confess that by individual you mean no other person than the bourgeois, than the middle-class owner of property. The person must indeed be swept out of the way and made impossible. Communism deprives no man of the power to appropriate the products of society. All that it does is to deprive him of the power to subjugate the labor of others by means of such appropriation. Hold on. And not just because there's an arrow there, this is just the download that I got. Communism deprives no man of the power to appropriate the products of society. All that it does is to deprive him of the power to subjugate the labor of others by means of such appropriation. Okay, let's take that. That's interesting. That's a good one. That is a great point. Let's talk about that, because communism didn't do that. Okay? We had communism, and that's one of those things that just communism just failed to do. Okay, so communism deprives no man of the power to appropriate the products of society. All that it does is to deprive him of the power to subjugate the labor of others by means of such appropriation. Okay. I'm going to ask a question. This might be a good place. Well, yeah, we'll figure it out. Okay. I'm going to have a small conversation with Elon Musk's cyber child over here, Grok. All right. What was the market like in the Soviet Union at its peak? All right. The Soviet Union at its peak, depending on how you define it, could be the late 1950s, early 1960s, post-Stalin recovery, Khrushchev's reforms, Sputnik-era optimism, the mid-1970s, Brezhnev's era, stability, highest living standards for most citizens, or even the early 1980s, just before stagnation became undeniable. In practice, the consumer market that ordinary citizens experienced was remarkably similar from the late 1960s until the 1980s, with only gradual deterioration. Okay, here's what the consumer market actually looked like. All right, official retail state stores. Almost everything was sold through state-owned shops. Universal Mag department stores, gastronome, food stores, specialized shops. Prices were fixed nationwide, very low by Western standards, but wages were also low. A typical engineer earned 120 to 200 rubles a month. Oh, look at that! There was room. There was room for a nice 80-point spread in that special. A factory worker, 150 to 300. A doctor turns. See, these are just okay. These are wages. These are just wages. This is wages. Like, this is just one big bourgeois entity. So all they did was say, dude, the problem is that you've got too many bourgeois. You just need one bourgeois. One bourgeois will do you right. And that's what you got. The chronic shortages of almost everything except bread, vodka, potatoes, cabbage, and basic dairy, meat, butter, good sausage, coffee, chocolate, tropical fruit, decent clothes, shoes, furniture, appliances, and cars were all in short supply. Okay, yeah. Basic dairy, then there's a period. The word... the words are a little bit mashed together for some weird reason. But anyway, queues were daily reality. So these are the people queued for hours for anything. Yeah, so the lines, that's just what it was like. That's the peak. That's peak. Black market, semi-legal trade, secondary economy, collective farm markets. All right. So they had wages. So, okay, last question. Who backed their currency? The Soviet ruble was not backed by gold, silver, or any foreign currency after the early 20s. Oh, so they went off gold too. From the 20s until the USSR's collapse in 91, it was purely fiat, whose value was set and controlled entirely by the state with no convertible backing. Here's what actually backed the Soviet ruble in practice, right? This is one of the big distinctions, right? Because the Communist Party becomes the chairman of the board of the Federal Reserve. That's what happens here. Okay? So you had from 22 to 24 the gold, the chevronnet, briefly convertible, used mostly for foreign trade. 24 to the 30s, gold standard formally abandoned in 28. Became non-convertible gold. Reserves existed but were secret and not tied to money supply. Right. Okay. So this is all going on under Lenin. So this is them robbing. This is the theft of the nation. This is their nation getting sacked right here. This is the emperor's wealth being stolen. Understand? The wealth that was doing its job in supporting the empire and supporting the motherland primarily, which by his foolishness he squelched and betrayed the entire bloodline, the system, and even his faith. Because remember, he collapses. Atheism takes over with the Soviet fucking Union. And does the Eastern Orthodoxy have the records of the bloodline? Is there a czar waiting in the Kiev Rus that secretly works with Vladimir Putin? Maybe. I have nothing that backs that up, but I have a very, very wild imagination. And that, honestly, this is more imagination. It's not me. I'm not being a seer with this one, to be completely honest with you. If I get it right, it's totally just the Norns, okay? So 37 to 1950, Stalin era officially backed by gold and goods. Pure propaganda. Ruble was inconvertible and worthless abroad. 1961, monetary reform. Khrushchev claimed backed by gold again. False. Officially backed the entire national wealth of USSR. Practice back central planning. Okay, yeah. So just like we suspect in the United States that we have a completely fiat currency, especially by the standard that we actually don't have physical gold in Fort Knox, which is one of the assets by which we hold up our promise to pay. Okay, so yeah, no, that's perfect. All right, good. That's all I needed to know. That makes general sense. It doesn't get into any conspiracies, but I didn't ask it. All right. I think maybe, let me take a scroll down a couple pages. Yeah. This goes quite a while. All right, we're done. We're done. Let me bring it back up to where we were so I don't lose my place. All right. Stop. The mouse didn't want to let it go. Don't you hate it when your mouse just doesn't want to let it go? Whole game gets away from you. There we go. Down. All right. Let me go check the chat room real quick before I go. And Thelonious, how you doing, man? It's been a hot minute. Z, it's crazy how often this happens. Today it's beef picanha encrusted in garlic herbs, sear blackened by salt extract from the volcanoes of Iceland. Wow. Can you ship me some of that? I'll take it. Email me. My email's in the description below. All right, guys. I'll probably see you tomorrow with Stein, unless something's up with Stein. Otherwise, I'm available for it. It's 5 o'clock. I'm going to have a killer night. I'll catch you guys soon. Whoops. Hold on. I'm getting ahead of myself. There we go.